You have committed a grave crime, and the court demands that you immediately remove this medal from yourself.
The most decorated woman in the room, a war hero with the nation's highest honor resting on her chest, was about to be challenged by the one person who should have recognized her sacrifice, a civilian judge, blind to the weight of the ribbon. "Ma'am, I must ask you to remove that necklace," the judge commanded. His voice, perfectly calibrated for the imposing, cavernous courtroom, was a monotone instrument of sterile authority designed to brook no argument. This chamber adheres to a strict code of decorum. Unauthorized decorations are simply not permitted here. Ella Anderson, however, did not flinch, her composure absolute. She remained seated precisely in the third row of the public gallery, her posture ramrod straight, her hands settled in her lap with an almost unnatural serenity. Her singular focus was not on the elevated bench, but on the young man standing before it. A sailor named Peterson, little more than a kid, who was facing a steep speeding ticket fine he was wholly unable to pay. Ella was there in a quiet, unwavering show of support for him. The judge's reprimand, though clearly aimed at her, seemed to drift through the air like an echo from a distant, entirely different world. The supposed offense rested against the simple, vibrant red of her blouse. It was, emphatically, not a necklace. A ribbon of pale blue, adorned with 13 small white stars, secured a gold 5-pointed star centered with an anchor and framed by a laurel wreath. It was the Medal of Honor. Judge Harrington, a man whose official portrait dominated the lobby entrance, an ego that seemed to visibly swell to fill the very room, craned his neck, peering down from his imposing, polished oak bench. He gave his glasses a sharp adjustment, his expression hardening into one of profound, visible annoyance, like a person swatting a troublesome insect that had dared to come too close to his power. "Ma'am, did you hear me?" The judge pressed again, his voice tight. He emphasized his demand with a light, insistent tapping of his gavel, a repetitive sound that was hollow, like a woodpecker drilling into a lifeless piece of wood. "The bailiff will assist you in complying, if necessary." The bailiff, a physically substantial man whose face was etched with a kind, weary resignation, shifted his weight uncomfortably. He glanced from Judge Harrington's haughty, imperious scowl to the utterly composed woman in the gallery. Taking a hesitant half-step toward her, he then immediately halted. There was something about Ella's profound stillness, her complete absence of either fear or outright defiance, that gave the seasoned professional pause. Up close, he could now clearly discern the intricate details of the metal object, noting how it specifically caught the flat, cool, fluorescent light overhead. It radiated an undeniable gravity. It felt exceptionally heavy and important. "Your Honor," Ella finally responded, her voice perfectly clear and steady. It was not raised, yet it managed to penetrate and fill every corner of the suddenly silent courtroom. "It is authorized." The sheer simplicity of her declaration appeared to inflame the judge's temper further. He took it not merely as a challenge to his direct order, but as an intolerable affront to his professional knowledge and his supreme authority within the court. "Authorized by whom?" Harrington demanded, his voice bordering on a shout. "I am the authority in this courtroom, and I emphatically state it is not. This is not a military parade ground, madam. It is a place dedicated to the law. Remove it immediately, or I will have you forcibly removed and held in contempt." The threat was unmistakable, and the atmosphere in the room instantly grew colder, the tension solidifying. The judge continued his indignant monologue, his tone swelling with self-righteous anger. "The dignity of this court is paramount. We cannot have citizens attending as if they are preparing for a costume party, wearing whatever trinkets they see fit. It fundamentally undermines the very fabric of these legal proceedings." The word trinket landed in the silence with a dull, disrespectful thud. The young sailor, Peterson, who had been standing before the bench for his minor infraction, nervously risked a quick glance back toward Ella. His face was a mask of sheer panic. He knew exactly who she was and what role she played at the local veterans center, having done so much for him and countless others. He started to open his mouth, intending to speak, but Ella offered a subtle, almost invisible shake of her head. This was not his battle to fight. The judge, meanwhile, was entirely consumed by his own increasing fury, his voice escalating with every word. He failed to notice the subtle ripple of discomfort his words were causing. The bailiff, a professional trained to follow direct orders, began his reluctant walk toward Ella. His steps were slow and heavy. Every professional instinct told him to comply, yet every personal instinct screamed that this was fundamentally wrong. He observed the other attendees in the public gallery, a few family members awaiting their own cases, a pair of lawyers waiting for their turn, all staring, rapt, completely absorbed by the unfolding scene. The air was thick with a heavy, unprecedented tension he had never before experienced in Courtroom 4B. This was not the typical nervousness before a verdict. It was the suffocating tension preceding an act of desecration. Ella's composure remained absolute, unwavering. She made no gesture to prepare for an argument or to offer resistance. Her focus was entirely internal, her breathing slow and deliberately measured, a discipline forged and perfected in places far more brutal and less forgiving than this carpeted, air-conditioned court chamber. She had stood firm against men wielding rocket launchers and rifles, men whose eyes held a searing, murderous hate. In comparison, the petty, self-serving tyranny of this judge was truly nothing. It was merely disappointing, a glaring failure within the very system she had sworn and bled to protect. "Bailiff!" the judge roared, his voice now sharp and cracking like a whip. "Remove the contraband and escort the woman from my courtroom. Her presence constitutes a disruption." The term contraband was an absurdity, a final stunning insult. The word contraband was a stunning final absurdity. Ella's gaze slowly drifted upward, settling on the American flag standing tall and solemn beside the judge's bench. She remembered the countless times she had rendered a crisp salute to that symbol, on dusty, remote, forward operating bases, on the gray, rolling steel decks of warships, and in the quiet, profound reverence of memorial services. The judge, in his arrogance, saw only a piece of cloth. She, however, saw a sacred promise. He saw a small piece of metal on a ribbon. She felt the crushing weight of the lives that object represented. The bailiff was now standing directly in her aisle. "Ma'am," he murmured, his voice barely audible, laced with what sounded like an apology. "Please don't make this difficult." Ella finally shifted her eyes from the flag and met his gaze. She saw the profound internal conflict there, the struggle between duty and a clear sense of shame. She offered him a small, sad smile. "Just doing your job. I understand." She made no move to rise, nor did she attempt to remove the medal. She would not, under any circumstances, participate in its dishonor. If they were determined to take it, they would have to do the act themselves. She would force them to own the full, devastating scope of their actions. The judge, interpreting her placid, unwavering resistance as the ultimate act of defiance against his authority, slammed his gavel down. The sound echoed like a sudden cannon shot throughout the silent room. "I find you in contempt of court. I am ordering you detained." As the bailiff tentatively reached out for her arm, the judge leaned forward on the bench, his face flushed with a mixture of victory and white-hot rage. "That gaudy necklace of yours," he spat out, "will be held as evidence of your contempt." Gaudy necklace. The phrase was a spark hitting dry tinder. For a dizzying fraction of a second, the courtroom dissolved entirely around Ella. The stale, recycled air was violently displaced by the thick, metallic scent of blood and cordite. The judge's distant, droning voice transformed into the high-pitched, terrifying whine of incoming mortar fire. The pressure of the blue ribbon at the back of her neck was no longer delicate silk. It became the rough, biting canvas of a trauma bag strap, digging fiercely into her skin as she low-crawled across shattered concrete and sand. She could feel the phantom weight on her back. Not a pack, but a body. A young Marine. A lance corporal from Ohio, who had been telling bad jokes just 1 hour earlier. She vividly recalled the desperate, frantic pressure of her hands packing his wounds, the helicopter's rotor wash violently kicking up a blinding, chaotic storm of dust, and the rhythmic, urgent shouting of call signs over the radio. The medal was not merely a memory of victory or a decorative trinket. It was a scar. It was a profound testament to the catastrophic cost of a single, brutal afternoon in the Helmand River Valley. It was a searing reminder of the 4 men who ultimately returned home whole because of her actions, and the 2 who tragically did not. Despite all she had done, all she had endured, the judge saw only a decoration. Ella Anderson saw only ghosts. Off to the side, at his small desk, the court clerk, David, felt a cold sweat begin to bead on his forehead. His fingers, previously moving smoothly over the keyboard, had frozen. David was only 24 years old, a former Marine Corps radio operator who had completed a 4-year enlistment. He had spent his service time at a quiet embassy post, never once seeing direct combat, but he had been rigorously trained to recognize certain things. He knew his ranks and his ribbons. He knew the precise difference between a unit citation and a personal award. And he knew, with a certainty that sent a deep chill down his spine, exactly what that pale blue ribbon signified. He had seen it in history books. He had listened to the citations read aloud by drill instructors until the words were permanently burned into his memory. He had seen the grainy, revered photographs of presidents placing that simple, sacred object around the necks of the nation's most profound heroes. And now, he was witnessing a pompous, utterly ignorant judge commanding a bailiff to rip it from a woman's neck. His heart hammered violently against his ribs. This was profoundly wrong. This was a direct, unforgivable violation of something fundamental and sacred. The judge's order to detain Ella was the final, intolerable straw. David's training, his deeply ingrained sense of order, protocol, and respect for the chain of command, was screaming an alarm. There was a higher, more essential authority than Judge Harrington, and that authority was being brazenly defiled. While the bailiff hesitated, his hand hovering uncertainly over Ella's shoulder, David's hands moved beneath his desk with a sudden, desperate speed. He covertly pulled out his personal cell phone. His thumb flew across the screen, his mind urgently cycling through his contacts. Who do you call when the system itself is breaking? He didn't have the Pentagon's number, but he did have the contact for the man who had been his company's master gunnery sergeant back in the Corps, a man now stationed as the senior enlisted advisor at the nearby naval base Coronado. It was an outrageous long shot, a gross breach of every protocol he could possibly imagine, but he no longer cared. He stabbed the call button and raised the phone to his ear, cupping his hand over his mouth and turning slightly away from the bench. "Master Guns, it's David Cho," he whispered, his voice tight with adrenaline and fear. "Sorry to call you like this, but you are not going to believe what is happening." The phone on the other end was silent for a tense moment. "Cho, what's going on? You sound spooked." "I'm at the county courthouse," David rushed out. "There's a woman here, a veteran. The judge is holding her in contempt. For what?" David took a shaky, fortifying breath. "She's wearing the Medal of Honor. Judge Harrington keeps calling it a necklace. He just ordered the bailiff to confiscate it." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute, a void filled with utter disbelief and building fury. When the master gunnery sergeant finally spoke, his earlier casualness was gone. His voice was flint, it was steel. "Give me the address and the courtroom number, now." David rattled off the information. "Keep your head down, Cho. We're on our way." The line clicked dead. David quietly slid the phone back into his pocket, his heart still slamming. He looked up at Ella Anderson. He had just lit a fuse. He could only pray the cavalry would arrive in time. The frantic call from Master Gunnery Sergeant Reyes ignited the command decks at Naval Base Coronado like a fast-spreading wildfire. A Master Guns with 28 years of dedicated service does not make frantic, unscheduled calls without catastrophic cause. Disregarding the usual bureaucratic chain of command entirely, Reyes strode directly from his office to the base commander's chief of staff, a Navy captain who was currently mid-presentation in a crucial logistics briefing. Reyes's interruption was a breach of protocol so severe and shocking that it instantly brought the entire meeting to a grinding halt. "Captain, we have a catastrophic problem," Reyes stated, his voice a dangerous low growl. "A Medal of Honor recipient is currently being held in contempt by a civilian judge downtown. He is actively attempting to confiscate her medal." The captain's face visibly drained of color. He immediately raised a hand to the presenter. "Excuse me." He followed Reyes out into the passageway. "Are you absolutely certain?" "The clerk on the scene is one of my former Marines," Reyes confirmed, his conviction absolute. "He's certain." At that precise moment, the gears of the institution began to turn with breathtaking institutional speed and precision. The captain made a single, decisive call, not down the ranks, but straight up, directly to the office of the Commander, U.S. Pacific Fleet. The four-star Admiral Thompson's aide, a young but exceptionally sharp lieutenant commander, took the call. Her eyes widened significantly as she listened to the terse details. She quickly scribbled a note onto a pad, tore it off, and without a single word of apology or explanation, walked straight into the Admiral's private conference room where he was meeting with a foreign naval delegation. She placed the note face down on the polished mahogany directly in front of Admiral Thompson. He gave her a look of sharp, diplomatic annoyance before lowering his gaze. He read the note once, then read it a second time. The friendly, diplomatic warmth instantly vanished from his face, replaced by a glacial, alarming calm that his staff knew meant serious, immediate trouble. The note was simple and devastating. MCPO Ella Anderson, County Courthouse, Courtroom 4B. Judge ordering medal confiscated. Admiral Thompson stood up abruptly, shattering the diplomatic atmosphere. "Gentlemen, you must forgive me," he announced to the stunned delegates. "A matter of extreme national importance has just arisen. We will have to reschedule." He strode purposefully out of the room, his aide falling into step beside him. "Get me her file now," he commanded. "And get my car. Tell the base commander and Master Chief Reyes to meet me at the courthouse, in full dress uniform." In the Admiral's office, Ella Anderson's service record flashed onto a large monitor. The aide gasped audibly. The screen was a blinding constellation of heroism. Navy Cross, Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts, and at the very top, the official citation for the Medal of Honor, awarded for actions truly above and beyond the call of duty. Her official photograph showed a woman with tired, knowing eyes, a Master Chief's anchor visible on her collar. Admiral Thompson stared at the photo. He knew that face. He had been the battle group commander offshore when her unit had been hit. He had personally read the after-action reports, the raw, unbelievable accounts of her courage, and had signed the initial recommendation for her award himself. This was not some abstract historical hero. This was one of his own. Back in Courtroom 4B, Judge Harrington was basking in the final moments of his perceived power. The bailiff, caught in the unbearable tension between a direct order and a powerful internal conviction of wrongness, had placed a gentle, hesitant hand on Ella's arm. "Ma'am, you truly have to come with me," he pleaded in a quiet, strained voice. "This is the last time I will say it," the judge boomed, pointing a rigid, accusatory finger at her. "You will surrender that unauthorized decoration as evidence of your contempt for the lawful order of this court. Failure to do so will result in additional charges. You are willfully obstructing justice." He was utterly consumed by his own sense of authority, so blinded by the perceived slight to his office that he had pushed far past the point of no return. He was no longer a mere judge enforcing courtroom decorum. He was a man aggressively demanding a hero surrender her honor. To confiscate that medal was not just taking a piece of metal, it was an audacious attempt to nullify the profound sacrifice it represented. The young sailor Peterson, finally breaking his terrified silence, cried out, "Your Honor, stop! You don't know who she is!" "Silence!" the judge roared, smashing his gavel down again. "One more outburst and I'll have you joining her in a cell." It was at that precise, thunderous moment that the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. They didn't creak. They opened with a solid, definitive thud that instantly commanded the attention of every single person present. Framed in the doorway stood Admiral Thompson. 4 silver stars glittered brilliantly on the collar of his pristine service dress white uniform. On one side stood the base commander, a 2-star rear admiral. On the other stood Master Gunnery Sergeant Reyes, his Marine Corps dress blues uniform, a rigid slash of intense color and rigid formality. Behind them, a silent phalanx of other senior officers and enlisted personnel filled the entrance. They did not storm in. They walked, their steps measured, their black dress shoes creating a soft, rhythmic cadence on the tiled floor. The sound was more intimidating than any shout. It was the sound of resolute purpose. It was the sound of an institution arriving to protect its own. The entire courtroom froze. The judge's mouth hung agape, his words dying pathetically in his throat. The bailiff snatched his hand back from Ella's arm as if he'd been physically burned. Every head swiveled to stare at the silent, imposing procession moving down the center aisle. Admiral Thompson's eyes, a piercing blue, scanned nothing else in the room. He did not look at the flag, the bench, or the cowering judge. His gaze was locked solely on the unassuming woman in the 3rd row. He walked right past the bar separating the gallery from the court area and stopped directly in front of her. The room was so quiet, that the faint hum of the overhead fluorescent light sounded like a roar. Ella looked up and met the Admiral's eyes. A brief flicker of mutual recognition passed between them. Then Admiral Thompson did something that shattered every last shred of Judge Harrington's authority. He brought his heels together with an audible, sharp click. He raised his right hand in a salute so crisp, so meticulously precise, it seemed to cut the very air. A 4-star admiral saluting a retired enlisted woman. It was the ultimate, universally recognized gesture of respect, a custom reserved almost exclusively for the recipient of one specific award. He held the salute for a long, silent moment before sharply dropping his hand. "Master Chief Petty Officer Anderson," the Admiral stated, his voice a calm, deep baritone that carried infinitely more power than the judge's angry shouts ever could. "It is an honor to see you again." He then turned his head slightly, not fully facing the judge, but ensuring he was heard. "For the edification of the court," he began, his voice adopting a formal, declamatory tone. "This is Master Chief Hospital Corpsman Ella Anderson, United States Navy, retired. The decoration she is wearing is the Medal of Honor, awarded to her for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of her life above and beyond the call of duty." The Admiral took a single step aside so he could clearly see both Ella and the bench. On October 17, 2012, during an ambush in the Helmand River Valley, Afghanistan, then Chief Petty Officer Anderson's platoon was pinned down by overwhelming enemy machine gun and RPG fire. With 3 Marines critically wounded in the open, she left her covered position without hesitation and ran directly into the kill zone. The crowd was mesmerized. Lawyers, clerks, citizens, everyone was listening intently, picturing the horrific scene. The court clerk, David, felt tears welling uncontrollably in his eyes. She shielded the first Marine with her own body while applying a tourniquet to his leg. The Admiral continued, his voice absolutely unwavering. She was wounded by shrapnel in the process. Ignoring her own injuries, she dragged that Marine to cover before running back into the fire to retrieve the second. While treating him, she engaged the enemy with her sidearm, suppressing a machine gun nest long enough for her team to regroup. She ran back a third time for the third man and was wounded again, this time by a gunshot to the shoulder. Despite her wounds, she stabilized all 3 critical casualties and refused evacuation for herself until every one of her wounded comrades was safely on a helicopter. Her actions are directly credited with saving the lives of 4 United States Marines. He paused, letting the enormous weight of the story settle into the room's stunned silence. The judge's face had changed from flushed red to a sickly, pasty white. His gavel lay forgotten on the desk. "That trinket," the Admiral said, his voice dropping to a dangerously quiet, cutting level as he finally turned to face the judge directly, "is the highest honor our nation can bestow upon a service member. Its wear is not only authorized, it is encouraged by federal law. A law which, I might add, makes any unauthorized attempt to wear or purchase this medal a federal crime. Your order to confiscate it was not only an insult of the highest order, it was an order to commit an unlawful act. The rebuke was complete. The public humiliation of Judge Harrington was a palpable, crushing thing. He shrank visibly behind his bench, a small, insignificant man in an oversized chair. It was Ella who spoke next. She slowly rose to her feet, wincing slightly from an old, deep ache in her shoulder, a physical reminder of the day the medal was earned. She looked not at the Admiral, who stood as her silent champion, but directly at the judge. There was no trace of triumph or gloating in her eyes, only a deep, weary sadness and profound disappointment. "Your Honor," she said, her voice soft yet firm, carrying a quiet authority that transcended the judge's own booming tones. "I respect the rules of this courtroom. I respect the law. Standards are important. I spent 30 years of my life enforcing them." She paused, her gaze steady and unwavering. "But standards must be applied with wisdom and understanding. They should not be used as a weapon of ignorance." She allowed her words to sink fully into the stunned silence of the room. "Don't soften standards," she advised. "Just be better at recognizing them when they're right in front of you." Her simple, graceful lesson was far more devastating than the Admiral's fury. It wasn't a lecture delivered by a superior officer. It was a profound piece of wisdom delivered by someone who had undeniably earned the right to give it. As she finished speaking, another image flashed in her mind, brief and vivid. Not the dust and chaos of battle, but the hushed, reverent quiet of the Oval Office. She saw the President of the United States, his face etched with solemn respect, as he fastened the blue ribbon around her neck. She remembered the weight of it then, how it felt both impossibly heavy with sacrifice and as light as a feather with national gratitude. That moment, the pinnacle of national thanks, felt a universe away from this shabby, misguided conflict in a local courtroom. The contrast was a final, silent testament to the chasm between her world and the judge's. The fallout was immediate and absolute. Judge Harrington, looking like a defeated ghost, stammered a string of incoherent apologies. He dismissed the contempt charge against Ella Anderson. He then, with a frantic wave of his trembling hand, dismissed the speeding ticket against the young sailor Peterson. The proceedings for the day were abruptly adjourned. Admiral Thompson and his entourage, having delivered their overwhelming institutional support, formed a protective, resolute circle around Ella, escorting her from the courtroom and leaving Judge Harrington to stew alone in the smoking ruins of his own reputation. The fallout from the courtroom showdown was swift and undeniable. Though the incident never escalated to major national headlines, the story, fueled by the lawyers, the court staff, and the military personnel present, spread rapidly through the local legal and veteran communities. In the weeks that followed, Judge Harrington faced severe repercussions. He was formally censured by the State Judicial Review Board for his profound display of ignorance and abuse of authority. More importantly, as a direct result of the highly public incident, a new mandatory training program focusing on veterans affairs and cultural competency was instituted for all administrative staff and judicial personnel at the county courthouse. Rumor, in a strange twist, suggested the judge himself became a primary, though quiet, force behind this new initiative, desperate to genuinely make amends. About a month later, Ella was going about her ordinary life, shopping at the commissary on the naval base. As she deliberately pushed her cart down the canned goods aisle, a man in civilian clothes approached her hesitantly. It was Harrington. Without his authoritative black robe and the elevated height of the judicial bench, he appeared physically smaller, visibly older, and deeply, truly tired. "Master Chief Anderson," he said, his voice quiet, stripped entirely of its former arrogance. Ella stopped her cart and looked at him calmly. "Mr. Harrington." He swallowed hard, his eyes unable to fully meet hers. "I wanted to apologize again," he managed to say. "There is absolutely no excuse for my conduct. My ignorance was profound, and what I did was, frankly, unforgivable. But I am asking for your forgiveness anyway." Ella studied his face intently. She recognized genuine remorse there, a deep and painful sense of shame. She thought of all the young sailors and soldiers she had mentored over her decades of service, kids who had made mistakes, sometimes significant ones. Her job, she knew, was never to break them down, but rather to build them back up and guide them to be better. "What's done is done, Mr. Harrington," she said evenly, her voice steady. "What matters is what you do now. I heard about the new training program at the courthouse. That's a good start." He finally looked up, a flicker of profound relief visible in his eyes. "Thank you, Master Chief. Thank you." He gave a solemn nod, then turned and quietly walked away. Ella watched him go, then continued with her shopping. The battle in the courtroom was over. The essential lesson had been powerfully taught, and perhaps, just perhaps, a small seed of understanding had been firmly planted where once there was only careless, devastating ignorance.